Video game consoles are a tricky business. For every hugely successful Wii or PlayStation 2 or Nintendo DS, there are a dozen Bandai Wonderswans. What? Exactly. Whether it's due to a lack of games, a botched launch, or an unshakable belief in the monetary potential of edutainment, plenty of consoles throughout gaming history have fallen by the wayside and been ground under the wheels of their rivals. Here are 7 instances where it was pretty clear why. Wonderswan. Sorry, I'm still mad about it.
Hello? Hello? I have a surprise for all the slackers, but nothing better to do than play games and surf the net all day. GameCom!
It was 1997. Google wouldn't be invented for another year, and modems still sounded like a telephone being murdered. We didn't know then what URLs were or what they did, but we did know that they sounded cool and exciting. We had at least that in common with the creators of this console, who dubbed their gaming machine the Game.com, disappointingly actually pronounced Gamecom to signify, we assume, it was cool and exciting. In fact, the Gamecom was less of a website and more one of history's least desirable handheld devices, like a nostril hair trimmer with faulty electrical insulation. On the one hand, the Gamecom had a killer lineup of titles, including Duke Nukem 3D, Mortal Kombat Trilogy, and Resident Evil 2. On the other hand, its low-resolution black and white LCD screen was like staring at a charcoal rubbing of your favourite console games. Leon Kennedy has never looked so pixelated. That was Leon, right? In fairness, the Gamecom had a higher resolution screen than the Game Boy, but in fairness to the Game Boy was released 8 years earlier during an entirely different decade, in 1989. And although those recognisable game titles were a draw, the actual games themselves were severely hobbled versions of their home console equivalents. Mortal Kombat Trilogy had only 13 characters rather than the 32 in the full game, and Duke Nukem played like a slideshow. Not in this game, you're not, pal. And just to really endear the Gamecom to fans, the TV commercial featured a guy berating people asking questions about the system. Probably best not to answer that question anyway. However much it is, it's too much.
With a name like Infinium Labs, you'd expect this early 2000s tech startup to be making something like faster than light travel, or possibly a time machine that whitens your teeth. Instead, they were actually developing a games console called the Phantom. The Phantom was designed to be a broadband-connected console built on PC architecture with a subscription service that would allow you to buy or rent games on demand. Not a terrible idea, you might say, just a bit ahead of its time, like Leonardo da Vinci's helicopter, but way less impressive. In terms of games, the Phantom appeared at E3 2004 running Unreal Tournament 2004, but other than that, we can only go on the games mentioned in the promotional video. Cancelled sci-fi shooter Abducted, 3D golf game Mini Golf Mega World, Tron rip-off Sonic Speedsters, and a game called Bikini Karate Babes, which it turns out is actually a real thing. Yes, I had to look it up, and yes, I will be clearing my browser history immediately. With delicious irony, the Phantom lived up to its ethereal name by never actually appearing on shop shelves. It's one of the most famous cases of video gaming vaporware and became a bit of an industry joke. If only Kickstarter had existed back then, they could have collected a load of money before revealing that their product doesn't actually exist. That's not to say Infinium Labs never released anything. Reborn as Phantom Entertainment in 2006, they finally released a product in November of that year.
Time machine!
No, it was a keyboard.
Oh?
No.
Released in 2005, portable device the Gizmondo was designed to take on the might of the Nintendo DS and Sony PSP. Built more like a smartphone than a handheld console, the Gizmondo supported MP3s and MP4 video and had a camera, GPS and SMS messaging. What it didn't have was games, which, and I'm going to stick my neck out here, is pretty important for a games console. When the Gizmondo launched in the UK on the 19th of March 2005, there was just a single first-party game called Trailblazer available to buy, which was a port of a 19-year-old Commodore 64 game. The future of handheld gaming, ladies and gents. Somehow, though, developers were duped into supporting this console, which is why also somehow there were unique Gizmondo versions of Richard Burns Rally, SSX3 and FIFA Soccer 2005. In the end, there was a colossal total of 14 officially released titles for the Gizmondo in its first year, before the company that made it, Tiger Telematics, went bankrupt with $300 million in debt. What's more, a key figure involved in the project was arrested for tearing a Ferrari Enzo in half at 194 miles per hour on the Pacific Coast Highway. Maybe if they'd ever gotten around to releasing Chicane Jensen Button Street Racing, he'd have had a bit more practice. If you want to sum up the Gizmondo's total failure to build a compelling library of playable titles, you just have to look at the title of its most popular game, Sticky Balls.
I'm gonna get them sticky balls.
On the plus side, playing that with the volume turned up is a really good way to clear the seat next to you on public transport.
During the 1990s, CD-ROMs were the hottest thing in gaming, with their increased storage capacity allowing for much higher quality music, visuals, and full-motion video of Jeff Goldblum as Dracula.
Beauty. My beauty.
Hoping to ride the wave of CD-ROM popularity that presumably would continue for all time, electronics company Philips introduced the CDI, a home console with a CD-ROM drive that was considerably cheaper than a PC, thanks to not needing any of the expensive additional things PCs had, like monitors, keyboards, or fun games to play.
CDI.
What?
Compact Disc Interactive. It plays everything from music CDs to educational games, all through your television, all on its big screen, and all in full-motion digital video.
That wasn't for lack of trying. Philips acquired the rights to make games using Nintendo characters, which meant the CDI was home to a Mario game.
Nice of the princess to invite us over for a picnic, eh, Luigi? I hope she made lots of spaghetti.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, it says they had 3 Zelda games. Maybe those are better.
What happened?
Nothing, Link. We were just about to have a feast.
Great!
Yikes! Starting to see what the problem was here. More FMV games followed, including a range of light gun shooters such as Mad Dog McCree, action games such as Dragon's Lair, and the actually critically acclaimed Burn Cycle. But it was too little too late for the Philips CDI, which was discontinued in 1998, having sold only 200,000 units and having lost Philips $1 billion. Come on, Philips, no FMV game is worth $1 billion. Unless it's got Jeff Goldblum in it as Dracula, obviously.
Back before Apple was making increasingly enormous mobile phones, it had a bash at the games console market with the Apple Bandai Pippin. A collaboration with Bandai, the Pippin was from the period 5 years before the iPod arrived, when Apple was still a deeply nerdy company. As a result, it looked less like a sleek piece of Californian product design and more like something cobbled together from old PC bits someone found in their shed. It also retailed for a staggering $600. What it did have, though, was a unique gamepad called the Applejack that featured a trackball on it long before Sony thought to add a touchpad to its PS4 controller. What Sony had thought to do, though, was release the PlayStation a year earlier for half the price. The other problem was that the Pippin was mainly designed for multimedia CD-ROM titles, which, along with its beige styling, meant it had the deathly whiff of education about it. In the end, Bandai was only able to sell around 42,000 Pippins, having manufactured fewer than 100,000 of the things. Even Super Marathon, a first-person shooter from a little-known studio called Bungie, couldn't transform the fortunes of this console. Just think, in a parallel universe where the Pippin was successful, Halo might have been a Pippin 2 exclusive. We might have been called Outside Pippin. Weird. But it's not all bad news. The expensive failure of the Pippin was one of the reasons Apple CEO Michael Spindler ended up stepping down, paving the way for Steve Jobs to return to the company as CEO in 1997, and via the medium of turtlenecks and touchscreens, turn it into the multi-billion-dollar electronics company it is today. But most importantly, did the Pippin have a headphone jack? You're damn right it did, right there, front and centre. Cool Apple, you could learn a thing or two from nerdy Apple.
I love video games, but more and more people are moving away from the television. There's a lot of focus today on the mobile and web platform. It's easier to develop games for those platforms than the television. It costs a lot of money, you have to work with established players in the space, and I've been trying to figure out how do we get them back to it.
With a name that sounds exactly like your reaction to the gut punch of discovering that the console you just bought is trash, Ouya was actually a massive Kickstarter success story. Unfortunately, Kickstarter is about the only place it was successful, generating $8.5 million in pledges on the promise of a home console that would revolutionise gaming with an affordable price, a free trial element in every game, and the flexibility of the Android platform. Everything after that was a bit of a disaster. Not like a Titanic sinking level of disaster, more like an Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull level of disaster. Yeah. For a start, even when it launched, the Ouya didn't have the latest generation of the NVIDIA Tegra chip powering its graphics, meaning its performance was shaky at best. Then there was the fragile plasticky controller with its sticky buttons. Finally, there was the limited selection of games, most of which were pulled straight from the Google Play Store. Basically, it did pretty much everything your Android phone did, only you couldn't fit it in your pocket, text your mum on it, or play it on the bus. A refreshed Ouya was released in 2014, featuring exactly the same slightly rubbish graphics chip, but with slightly more storage. By 2015, Ouya had been sold to peripheral manufacturer Razer, and the employees put to work on their own Android console, the Forge TV. It's like they learned literally nothing. Still, disastrous as the Ouya saga was, as CEO Julie Ehrman pointed out at the time, the project took courage.
It takes a lot of guts and courage. Well, I wasn't a female, I'd say big balls.
All right, Julie, stop. I'm getting Gizmondo flashbacks.
The successor to the hugely popular Sega Genesis/Mega Drive was hotly anticipated in the run-up to its launch, and probably would have been a huge success if it wasn't for a little thing I like to call the PlayStation. Everyone else calls it that as well. The Saturn didn't help itself either, thanks to a disastrous marketing campaign leading up to its release. It was originally announced that the Saturn would launch on Saturday, September 2nd, 1995, which Sega dubbed Saturn Day. And yet, despite this excellent wordplay, no one went with Wednesday or Maystation 3. The road not taken. Then, during the E3 trade conference in June 1995, Sega announced that, surprise, it was available right now exclusively in 4 selected retailers, which came as a surprise to all other retailers, as well as the people actually making Sega Saturn games. That meant the Saturn launched to very little fanfare with only 6 games, one of which was Clockwork Knight. Ew. It also cost $399, a fact that Sony exploited with their E3 1995 conference, which was just their American president, Steve Race, walking onto stage, saying $299 and then walking off.
$299.
Savage. The weird, muted early release, the higher price, and the lack of a good 3D Sonic game all helped torpedo the Saturn, which was a shame, as it did have some great games eventually, including Nights into Dreams, Virtua Fighter, and Panzer Dragoon. And I mean, yeah, sure it had some weird commercials, but have you ever seen a PlayStation commercial? Guess that's just what people were into back then.
Forget progress by proxy. Land on your own moon.
Alright, those were 7 terribly failed consoles, but how about you console yourself with some excellent videos? We've got... yeah, alright, fair. We've got some stuff from us up here, and some stuff from our sister channel, Outside Extra, down here. And if you'd like to subscribe for more of this sort of thing, excellent videos, not terrible puns, although you will get some of those as well, why not click the subscribe button?